I ruin men. She said it quietly, like a warning. Like if I stayed sitting on that bench 1 minute longer, something inside her would eventually break me too. For a second, the words just hung there between us. I should have stood up. Any normal man would have. Instead, I laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just a small breath of disbelief that slipped out before I could stop it. Her head snapped up. The look in her eyes was sharp, defensive, like a stray dog expecting to be kicked. You think that's funny? She asked. I shook my head slowly. No. She stared at me, waiting. I leaned back against the bench and watched my daughter Lily running across the grass a few yards away. She was chasing pigeons like they owed her money. Her tiny sneakers slapped the pavement while the birds flapped away in dramatic panic. Then I looked back at the woman beside me. It's just strange, I said calmly. What is? That someone convinced you a wound was a fact. Her eyebrows pulled together. She didn't understand what I meant yet, but the words had already landed. I could see it in the way her fingers tightened together in her lap. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then stopped. That moment right there was the first crack in the wall she had built around herself. But the truth is, our story didn't start with that sentence. It started about 4 months earlier, with a pigeon and a feather, and a little girl who had no idea she was about to change 2 adult lives. That afternoon had been warm and quiet. The kind of slow day that single parents treasure because nothing is falling apart. Lily had insisted we go to the park. She had just learned to ride her tiny pink scooter and believed the entire world needed to witness this achievement. So we went. She zoomed up and down the path while I sat on a bench pretending to read emails on my phone. Truthfully, I was just watching her. When you almost lose everything once, you start paying attention to small moments. 3 years earlier, my wife had died after a long illness. The doctors had used words like aggressive and unavoidable. The hospital used words like time. I learned quickly that time is the only thing nobody can bargain with. For months after she was gone, I moved through life like someone underwater. Every sound felt far away. Every day felt like something I had to survive rather than live. But Lily kept pulling me back to the surface. Kids do that. They don't give grief permission to stop the world. They still want pancakes. They still want bedtime stories. They still want someone to clap when they ride a scooter without falling. So little by little, I learned how to breathe again. Badly braided hair, burned pancakes, laundry disasters, but we were surviving. And that afternoon in the park felt peaceful. Until Lily spotted the pigeons. She abandoned her scooter instantly. Birds exploded into the air while she chased them with the determination of a tiny hunter. That was when it happened. One of the pigeons flapped sideways. Lily tripped. She hit the ground hard. Before I could even stand up, someone else was already kneeling beside her, a woman. She brushed the dirt from Lily's knees with careful hands. "Hey," she said gently, "that was a pretty brave fall." Lily sniffed and nodded. The woman smiled and helped her stand. By the time I reached them, Lily had already recovered enough to start chasing birds again. Kids are built differently. The woman stood up slowly. She looked like she hoped no one would notice her. Average height, dark hair pulled back loosely, simple clothes, but the thing I noticed most was the way she held herself. Careful, guarded, like someone who had learned the safest place to stand in the world was slightly behind everyone else. "Thanks," I said. She nodded once. "You're welcome." Then she walked to the far end of the bench area and sat down. Most people would have left it at that, but something about the moment stuck with me. Maybe it was the gentleness in her voice. Maybe it was the way Lily had trusted her instantly. Or maybe it was the quiet sadness I couldn't quite explain. 20 minutes passed. Lily discovered a feather near the grass. She ran back toward me like she had found pirate treasure. "Daddy, look." She shoved it into my face. It was a small gray feather. I examined it with exaggerated seriousness. "Well," I said slowly, "this appears to be a very rare pigeon feather." Her eyes widened. "Rare?" "Extremely." She gasped. Then she ran to show the feather to the woman sitting nearby. The woman looked surprised when Lily stopped in front of her. "Look what I found." She held the feather out proudly. The woman studied it carefully. Then she smiled. And something about that smile felt different. It wasn't polite. It wasn't forced. It was the kind of smile that looked like it had been missing for a long time and was slightly surprised to be back. "That," she said softly, "is definitely a treasure." Lily nodded proudly. Mission accomplished. She ran off again. The woman glanced toward me briefly. Then she looked away quickly. Like eye contact made her uncomfortable, so I stood up and walked over. "I'm Daniel," I said. She hesitated for half a second. "Sarah." Her voice was quiet, almost cautious. We sat on the bench with a respectful gap between us. For a while, we just watched Lily run around like the park belonged to her. Eventually, we started talking. Not deep things, just small pieces of life. Work, weather, kids. But the longer we talked, the more I noticed something strange. Every time Sarah laughed, she looked surprised by it, like joy was something she didn't trust. At one point, Lily climbed onto the bench between us. She studied Sarah carefully. Kids are terrible at pretending. They stare at people like scientists examining new species. Finally, Lily asked the question that changed the entire afternoon. "Do you like ice cream?" Sarah blinked, then she laughed softly. "I do." Lily nodded seriously. "Good." Then she looked at me. "We should get some." I sighed dramatically. "Well," I said, "when a child makes such a reasonable request." Sarah chuckled, then she started to stand. "I should probably." But Lily grabbed her hand. "Come with us." Sarah froze. You could almost see the old instincts fighting inside her. "Leave, don't stay, don't get involved." I stood up slowly. "It's not a date," I said casually. She looked at me. "It's just ice cream." She hesitated. Then Lily squeezed her hand again, and something inside Sarah softened. "Okay," she said quietly. That was the first time she stayed, the first time she didn't run, and none of us knew it yet. But that simple ice cream trip was the beginning of everything. 4 months later, she would sit beside me on the same bench and say the sentence that started tonight: "I ruin men." And I would laugh, because by then, I already knew the truth. The woman sitting beside me wasn't dangerous. She was just wounded. And wounds can heal. But Sarah didn't know that yet. And the moment she finally told me the real reason she believed, she destroyed every man who loved her. Even I wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt to hear. Sarah didn't say anything after I laughed. She just stared at me like she was trying to decide whether I was brave or stupid. Maybe both. The evening air had cooled and the park was quieter now. Lily sat on the grass nearby with a stick, drawing uneven circles in the dirt while humming to herself. Every few seconds she would glance up to make sure we were still there. Kids like knowing their world hasn't disappeared. Sarah finally spoke again. "You shouldn't laugh at that." "I wasn't laughing at you," I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then what were you laughing at?" "The certainty." She frowned. "The way you said it," I continued calmly, "like it's a law of nature, like gravity." She looked away. For a moment I thought she might stand up and leave. Instead, she crossed her arms and stared toward the trees. "You don't know me," she said quietly. "That's true. You don't know what I've done." "I don't. You don't know what I turn into when someone stays too long." I watched Lily drawing a crooked flower in the dirt. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Who told you that?" Sarah froze. It wasn't the question she expected. Most people argue with statements like hers. They try to prove them wrong. But lies don't break when you argue with them. They break when you expose where they came from. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly. For a long time she didn't answer. Then she spoke again. "My fiancé." The words sounded strange coming from her mouth, like something from a life that didn't belong to her anymore. "We were together 4 years, she continued. "He used to tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to him." Her voice stayed calm, but her hands had started twisting together again. "At first he was kind, funny, patient." She swallowed. "Then he lost his job." The park was quiet enough that I could hear the faint sound of Lily dragging her stick across the gravel. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Sarah continued. "At first it was just stress. Everyone said that was normal. She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Then the stress turned into anger. I didn't interrupt. People deserve space when they finally decide to tell the truth. He started saying little things, she said, small insults that sounded like jokes. She stared at the ground, then they stopped sounding like jokes. Her voice dropped lower. He said I made things harder, that I was demanding, that I expected too much. I could see the memory playing behind her eyes. I started apologizing a lot. That sentence hit harder than anything else she had said, because apologies are the first thing people learn when they're trying to survive someone else's anger. He would calm down after that, she continued, for a while. The wind moved through the trees above us. Leaves rustled softly, but the next time was worse. Her shoulders shifted slightly, like her body was remembering something her mind wanted to forget. The last year of our relationship, she said slowly, he had a favorite sentence. She stopped. I didn't rush her. Finally, she said it. He told me I ruin everything. The words came out flat, like she had repeated them too many times for them to hurt the same way. You ruin every good thing in my life. She took a breath. No man will ever stay with you. Her fingers tightened together. You're not fit for any man. There it was, the sentence that had followed her for years. I understood something then. People think heartbreak comes from losing someone. Sometimes it comes from believing what they said when they left. Sarah looked at me cautiously. See. She gestured slightly. I warned you. I leaned back against the bench. Sarah. She didn't respond. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did you believe him right away? Her eyebrows lifted slightly. What? When he first said those things, did you believe them? She hesitated. No. What did you think? That he was angry. And later? Her shoulders sank slightly. Later he said them every week. She looked down again. Eventually, it sounded less like anger. And more like truth, I finished quietly. She nodded. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then Lily ran over again. She climbed onto the bench between us like she owned the place. Daddy, look. She held up the feather again. It had survived the entire afternoon. I studied it seriously. Still rare, I said. She grinned. Then she turned to Sarah. Did you keep any treasures today? Sarah blinked. What? Lily shrugged. Daddy says if you find one good thing in a day, it's treasure. Sarah looked at me. I shrugged. It's our rule. Lily waited patiently. Sarah thought for a moment. Then she said something very small. I guess meeting you too. Lily nodded like that answer was perfectly acceptable. Then she hopped off the bench and ran back to her dirt drawings. Sarah watched her go. She's fearless, she said quietly. Yeah. She trusts people. She does. Sarah looked at the ground again. I used to be like that. The sentence hung in the air. Then she asked something I hadn't expected. Why aren't you angry? At who? My fiancé, what he said. I thought about that for a moment. Then I answered honestly, because I don't know him. She looked confused, but I do know something about grief. Her eyes shifted toward me. After my wife died, I continued slowly, my brain told me a lot of things. What kind of things? That life was over. That happiness was finished. That I was just surviving until Lily grew up. Sarah watched me carefully, and my brain was wrong. Lily ran past us again, chasing a bird that had absolutely no intention of cooperating. I pointed toward her. She proved it. Sarah watched Lily for a long moment. You loved your wife, she said quietly. I still do. That surprised her, but you're moving forward. Yes. How? I smiled faintly. You can carry love without letting pain drive the car. Sarah absorbed that sentence slowly. Then she whispered something almost to herself. I don't know how to do that. I know. She looked at me. How? Because you're still letting someone else's voice live in your head. She was silent again. Finally, she asked the question she had been avoiding. What if he was right? I shook my head gently. Sarah. What? That sentence you believe? Yes. It's not truth. She watched me carefully. It's a wound pretending to be a fact. Her breath caught slightly. The same words that had surprised her months earlier were landing again, but this time. She understood them, and for the first time since we met. Sarah looked less certain of the lie she had been carrying, but healing is never simple. Because just when someone starts believing they deserve happiness, fear usually finds one last way to fight back, and Sarah's fear was about to do something neither of us expected. Sarah didn't answer my last sentence. She just sat there quietly, staring at the feather Lily had dropped on the bench between us. The tiny gray thing looked fragile, light enough that the wind could carry it away, but somehow it had survived 4 months in Lily's collection of treasures. Sarah picked it up slowly. She turned it between her fingers like she was studying something complicated. I used to believe people, she said softly. I didn't interrupt. That sounds like a small thing, she continued, but it's not. Her eyes stayed on the feather. When someone breaks that, it changes how you see everything. I nodded. I know. She looked at me for a moment. You do? Yes. How? I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees, because grief does the same thing. She didn't speak, but she was listening. When my wife got sick, I said quietly, everyone told me the same thing. She waited. They said everything would be okay. The memory pulled a small smile from me. They meant well. But it wasn't okay. No. So after she died, I continued, I stopped trusting good news. Sarah watched me carefully. Every time something felt good, I assumed it would disappear. She looked down again. That sounds familiar. It should. I tapped the feather gently. Pain trains your brain to expect the worst. Sarah nodded slowly. But you said you moved forward. I did. How? I pointed toward Lily again. She was now trying to convince a squirrel that the feather belonged to her. The squirrel strongly disagreed. She forced me to, I said. Sarah smiled faintly. She didn't let grief decide our life. Sarah leaned back against the bench. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. That's why I have to stop this. I turned toward her. Stop what? She lifted her eyes. This. Her hand gestured between us. The bench, the conversations, the quiet evenings, all of it. I frowned. Why? Because I see where it's going. And where is that? Her voice stayed calm. Somewhere good. That surprised me. Sarah. She shook her head. You don't understand. Then explain. Her fingers tightened around the feather again. I like you. The words came out quickly, like she wanted to get them over with. And Lily, she added, she's incredible. A few yards away, Lily was still negotiating with wildlife. Sarah looked back at me. That's exactly why I need to leave. That makes no sense. It does to me. I waited, because people sometimes need a moment before they say the real reason, and then she said it. If I stay long enough, you'll care about me. I blinked. That's the problem. Yes. Why? Her voice dropped slightly. Because eventually you'll see the same things he saw. The old words had returned. You'll realize I'm too much, too complicated. She swallowed. You'll leave. The certainty in her voice was heartbreaking, not dramatic, not emotional, just quiet acceptance. Sarah, I said gently, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice stayed calm. I promised myself I wouldn't ruin another person. She stood up. The sudden movement made Lily look over from the grass. Sarah. The little girl ran toward us. Sarah forced a smile. Hey, kiddo. Lily climbed onto the bench again. You leaving? Sarah nodded. I think I should. Lily frowned, but we didn't finish our sunset. The words were simple, but they landed like a stone dropped in water. Sarah hesitated. What sunset? Lily pointed toward the trees. Every evening we watched the sky change colors from the bench. It had become a quiet routine. Lily's small voice stayed serious. You can't leave before the sky turns pink. Sarah glanced toward the horizon. The sun was already dipping lower. The sky had started glowing orange. Lily continued. Daddy says sunsets are important. Sarah looked at me. Why? I shrugged. Because endings deserve witnesses. Sarah stared at the sky for a moment, then she slowly sat back down. Okay, she whispered. We'll wait. Lily seemed satisfied. She hopped off the bench again and returned to her drawings. Sarah exhaled slowly. You see what I mean? She said quietly. What? I'm already getting attached. I leaned back against the bench again. That's not a crime. It feels dangerous. I studied her carefully. You're trying to leave before anything good can break. She didn't respond, which meant I was right. The sky slowly deepened in color. Orange faded into pink. Pink softened into purple. For a while we just watched the sunset. Finally Sarah spoke again. Daniel. Yes. If I hurt you, I would never forgive myself. The sentence was sincere. That mattered. But sincerity doesn't always equal truth, so I asked her something simple. Do you trust Lily? She looked confused. What? Do you trust her? Yes. Why? Because she's honest. And fearless, I added. Sarah nodded. Yes. Good. I pointed toward the grass. Lily had finished her drawing. She was now showing it to the squirrel again. What do you see when you look at her? I asked. Sarah watched quietly. A happy kid. Yes. What else? She loves you. I nodded. She does. Sarah glanced at me again. So Lily is an expert at one thing. What? People. Sarah frowned slightly. Kids know when someone is safe. Sarah looked at Lily again. The little girl suddenly ran toward us. She climbed onto the bench once more. Then she leaned against Sarah's arm casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Look, Lily said proudly. She held up her dirt drawing. It showed 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one tiny. The tiny one held a feather. Lily pointed at the drawing. That's me. She pointed at the tall stick figure. That's Daddy. Then she pointed at the third figure. That's you. Sarah blinked. You drew me. Lily nodded happily. Because you're nice. The sentence was small, but it shattered something invisible inside Sarah. Her eyes filled instantly. Children don't argue. They don't analyze. They simply see what adults forget. Sarah looked down at the drawing again. Then she whispered something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. What if she's wrong? I shook my head gently. She's not. Sarah looked at me. How do you know? I smiled faintly. Because Lily has never once mistaken a good person. Sarah stared at the little stick figure again, and for the first time, the fear in her eyes started losing the fight. But the real test wasn't belief. The real test was whether she would stay long enough to discover something even harder. That love doesn't arrive to fix broken people. It arrives to stand beside them while they heal. And Sarah still had one last truth she hadn't told me yet, one that explained why her fiancé's words had cut so deep. Sarah stayed quiet after Lily showed her the drawing. The 3 stick figures were crooked and uneven, but the meaning behind them was clear enough. One tall, one small, and one standing right beside us. Sarah. She kept staring at that little figure like it was something fragile that might disappear if she blinked too quickly. Lily didn't notice the silence. She had already jumped off the bench again, chasing a leaf that the wind had decided to carry across the grass. Kids move on fast. Adults take longer. Sarah finally exhaled. I shouldn't be in that picture. I shook my head gently. Why not? Because pictures like that don't last. The certainty in her voice was softer now, but it was still there. The old fear hadn't vanished. It was just quieter. "Sarah," I said calmly, "you keep talking like the future already happened." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned the feather over in her fingers again. The same feather Lily had found the day we met. "I never told you the worst part," she said. "I waited. The day my engagement ended." Her voice slowed. "He didn't just leave." Her eyes moved toward the ground again. "He told me something first." I didn't interrupt. "He said loving me felt like carrying a storm." The sentence hung there. Sarah's fingers tightened around the feather. "He said every time things started to feel peaceful, I would ruin it." She swallowed. "Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too difficult." She laughed softly, but the one that stayed with me. Her voice dropped. "He said any man who stays with you will eventually regret it." The park had grown quiet, even the wind had slowed. "And I believed him," she finished. I nodded slowly. "I know." She looked at me. "You do?" "Yes." "How?" "Because you built your entire life around proving him right." Her eyes widened slightly. I continued gently. "You leave before people can stay. You doubt every good moment. You assume kindness is temporary." Sarah stared at me like I had opened a door she didn't want anyone to see. "That's how people protect themselves," I said. "From what?" "From disappointment." She didn't argue, because she knew it was true. Lily ran back toward us again. She had grass stains on her knees now and looked extremely proud of them. "Daddy." "Yes." "The sky is purple now." I looked up. She was right. The sunset had reached its final stage, deep violet fading into dark blue. Lily climbed onto the bench again. She leaned against Sarah without hesitation. "Did you see it?" Sarah nodded. "Yes." "Good," Lily said seriously, "because sunsets are special." Sarah smiled faintly. "Why?" Lily thought about that question for a moment. Then she gave the most honest answer a child could give. "Because they mean tomorrow is coming." The words landed softly, but they carried more truth than anything either adult had said all evening. Sarah blinked quickly. A tear slipped down before she could stop it. Lily tilted her head. "Are you sad?" Sarah shook her head. "No." "Then why are you crying?" Sarah wiped her cheek carefully. "Because sometimes hope hurts a little." Lily seemed to accept that explanation. Kids are surprisingly comfortable with complicated emotions. She hopped off the bench again and ran toward her scooter. Sarah watched her go. Then she turned toward me. "I think I finally understand something." "What's that?" "The man I was engaged to." She paused. "He wasn't describing me." "No." "He was describing his anger." I nodded. "That happens a lot." She looked down at the feather again. Then she did something unexpected. She placed it gently in my hand. "Keep it." I frowned, "But it's Lily's treasure." Sarah smiled softly. "It was." Then she pointed toward the grass. Lily had already found a new stick to draw with. "Kids don't hold on to things forever," Sarah said. "They keep moving forward." Her voice was steadier now. "The feather did its job." "And what job was that?" Sarah looked at me for a long moment. "It helped me stay long enough to learn something." "What?" "That I wasn't broken." The words came out slowly, carefully, like she was still testing them. I didn't rush to respond. Some realizations deserve silence. After a moment, Sarah added something else. "The woman who believed she wasn't fit for any man." She looked toward the horizon again. "She's fading." "And the woman replacing her?" I asked. Sarah's smile was small but real. "She's learning how to believe in kindness again." I leaned back against the bench. "That sounds like progress." "It is." Lily suddenly raced back toward us one more time. "Daddy." "Yes." "I'm hungry." I sighed dramatically. "Of course you are." She pointed toward the park exit. "Can we get ice cream again?" Sarah laughed softly. The sound was different now. Lighter, not surprised anymore, just happy, I stood up. "Well," I said, "when a child makes such a reasonable request." Lily grabbed Sarah's hand immediately. "You're coming too." Sarah looked at me, not nervous, not afraid, just curious. I shrugged. "It's just ice cream." She thought for a second, then she nodded. "Okay." We started walking toward the street. Lily skipped ahead with her scooter. Sarah walked beside me quietly. The evening air felt cooler now, peaceful. After a moment she spoke again. "Daniel." "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For not believing the lie." I shook my head gently. "That wasn't my job." "What was?" "To sit beside you until you stopped believing it." Sarah absorbed that sentence slowly. Then she smiled, and the thing about that smile was that it no longer looked like someone borrowing happiness. It looked like someone who finally trusted it. We reached the corner where the ice cream shop lights glowed warmly. Lily was already pressing her face against the glass. Sarah laughed again. And in that moment I realized something simple. Sometimes people think love arrives to rescue them, but that's not really how it works. The right person doesn't arrive to fix your life. They arrive and sit beside you long enough for you to remember how to live it yourself. Sarah once believed she wasn't fit for any man, but the truth turned out to be much simpler. She had simply never met someone patient enough to see the real woman behind the wound. And sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is refuse to believe the lie someone else once told you. Because some promises don't need grand speeches. Some promises look like a quiet bench, a shared sunset, and a man who stays.